And thank you to everybody who is in attendance. I'm going to call this meeting of the Environment and Sustainability Task Force for Friday, May 14th. I'm going to call it to order at 1:09 p.m. and we do have a quorum. I'm not aware of any public comments, and so we'll go right into the next item, which is the approval of minutes from the April 12th, 2021 meeting. I hope you all have had a chance to look at those, and let me know, please, if you have any additions or changes or corrections. Hearing none, then I will ask for a motion for approval of those minutes.
Maria Bocalandro, motion to approve.
Thank you for that motion. And who seconded that?
Alan?
Alan, thank you for your second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Not hearing any. The minutes are approved as written. Thank you so much. We're going to go now into Sue updating us on the Environmental Commission and on the Urban Forest Master Plan approval. So Sue?
I will just very quickly, because we have a lot of things on the agenda. I am happy to report back to you that the ordinance establishing an environmental commission was approved by council on the 28th of April. We have worked with the city secretary to develop the documents necessary to form that commission. They will put it out for public nomination for the 15 members that are nominated by the council members. They will do that as part of their fall commissioning, if you will. That'll happen in the August-September timeframe for approval of a commission by October 1. On the technical panel, that will be handled per our resolution by our department through you guys. We are still working with the city secretary's office and others to figure out how that is going to work. I would suggest, if you love serving on this task force as much as we have loved having you here, please let Ms. Grayson know. She will be working accordingly with the city secretaries to identify anyone that has a desire that's been really helpful on the task force thus far. So just keep that in mind. Same if you are not a City of Dallas resident, but would like to continue your work perhaps on the technical panel, please let Ms. Grayson know that as well. And then we'll move forward as we can. As this information becomes more solid, we're happy to share a report on that. But I am so thrilled that we got something pulled together. It was a great deal of work, and it sailed through on consent agenda, so there weren't any questions even. So that's a testament to the great work that this task force has done so far. The Urban Forest Master Plan is on the City Council agenda next week on the 26th. I will tell you that agenda is jam-packed with environmental stuff. Eric Thompson is going to share a little bit here in a little bit about some of his resolutions that are on that agenda. We also have acceptance of a VW grant for charging infrastructure, and of course the Forest Master Plan. We are working with the Texas Trees Foundation, our tree operating departments, and our Office of Communications for a press release the following week. So stay tuned for that as well. That's all I've got for now. Just a whole lot of stuff coming out of the task force and out of our committee right now.
So Sue, I have a question. Were any changes made to the Urban Forest Master Plan when it was in the council committee?
There were no changes from the council committee. The only changes that we made is we aligned the schedule for performing the actions in the plan consistent with the recommendations of the internal city tree task force, which is those departments that are charged with implementing the plan.
So the plan had called for one department that would be really kind of in charge of trees in the city, where now it's divided among 4 different departments. So what is the final recommendation on that?
So with that, it's one of the recommendations in the plan. It did call for centralized management of the plan. And with the formation of the city task force of those departments, I feel like we're pretty well along the way towards a more coordinated effort on our trees. Joey, do you want to add anything?
Yes, thank you, Sue. So the recommendation is still in there though, right, Sue?
Yes, it is.
Okay, it's in there. And what I think is different is the plan had originally recommended that it happen immediately. That's not gonna, that gave us pause. So I think our answer right now is we like that we have a plan. We like that we have an organized task force of the tree departments and OEQS to help, achieve the objectives that are in there and push them forward. Any further consideration about how we would do something like that, it's going to require some further discussion because no one department owns all the trees. So it's a difficult undertaking, especially in a year where we already have a whole lot of other pressing items. So it's still in the plan is the long and short of it. And for now, we think we've got a good scheme to continue advancing the objectives of the plan.
So Joey, what you're saying is that the plan still has that in it about centralization, but it won't necessarily happen right away.
Correct. Give us time to show what we can do, and I guess also how our task force is able to implement. I'd say we left it in there. We're not objecting to it outright. We're just saying it's not going to happen immediately.
Well, Joey, do you have some idea of a time frame? Would it be a year? Would it be 2 years? Would it be 6 months? Or you can't see that, right now?
So I don't want to speak.
You don't want to commit, huh?
Yeah, well, I don't want to speak for the city manager, but I will say that in general, a realignment of departments and functions like that is something that we bake into a budget. And we're already in the middle of this, coming out of a pandemic, managing a whole host of things. So is it possible that a department reorganization could be done for a future budget year? Yes. Now, it probably won't be planned for this biennial budget as well, but it could be an undertaking, I'd say, in the next 2 to 3 years.
2 to 3 years. Oh.
Well, again, we're already baking the budget for this coming fiscal year, and it's going to have a plan for the out year. I'm not saying that we can't change it for the out year. What would that be, 22, 23? It's possible that it could be figured out in the course of this coming fiscal year, but that's why I'm saying 2 to 3. It won't be this one, 21, 22. It could potentially be 22, 23, or 23, 24.
Well, I
But again,
appreciate that. At least you're giving us some, kind of a straightforward assessment of where you think the timeline is going to be. So that is good information. Thank you, Joey. Is Jeanette Manier on the call? Because she really deserves a huge thank you from all of us for the work that she and the Texas Trees Foundation did on this urban forest master plan. I'm sure that she is thrilled that it has moved through council, or it's about to move through council. So anyway, Jeanette, big congratulations on that. I'm sorry she's not here, so we can't all congratulate her during this call, but just a huge undertaking. Well done. Well done. So Sue, do you have anything else to share with us?
I think that's the majority of the new information. I will be receiving a limited number of printed documents and an electronic copy of the plan that I will work with Brittany to get posted on our website as soon as it is approved by council.
Good.
We will be getting the copies of the final plan to the council members before that council date, though.
Okay, good. Good news. Thank you, Sue. If you then feel like you're done, we're going to go on to the next item, which is an update on the 2021 Texas Legislature, which our co-chair or our vice chair, Rita Beving, is going to give us. And then also Rita is going to continue on during the next section of our agenda, which is the CCAP plan, sectors, buildings, and energy. She'll be chairing that portion of the meeting. So Rita, can't wait to hear about this. So, and I know you've had changes right up through like last night.
This
And
morning.
there's going to be some changes discussed today.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, for those of you that weren't on our chatter before we had a quorum, most of you probably read that yesterday there was a showdown, so to speak, between the Senate and the House. The House is not happy that a lot of their bills that had overwhelming support, like on criminal justice and other things, are either not getting passed out or they're being gutted. And so yesterday afternoon, Representative Leach, who's a Republican, got on the House floor and called attention to these issues, and they voted to adjourn, which is highly unusual at this particular time. And they are not going to come back in till Sunday. And it just so happens that Sunday night is the deadline for all Senate bills and all Senate joint resolutions to either be set, they need to be set on the House daily calendar by 10 o'clock that night on Sunday. So there's always a lot of drama at the end of session, which ends on Memorial Day. The Speaker of the Senate, Lieutenant Governor Patrick, has already moved his priority bills up because he wants an up and down vote on them. So that's just some of the excitement in the last couple of days. So basically, everyone, there were over 7,000 bills filed this session. A lot of us that work on environmental issues or energy and so forth, probably watching 400 bills. I have my own particular niche, which is unrelated to the environment that I work on, but I wanted to bring up a few bills that would be of concern or interest on the CCAP. So Brittany, if you'll go to the next slide. So there are some bills of real concern to the CCAP. One that I'm going to start talking about, we all thought was dead last week. And that's Senate Bill 1261, that earlier in the session we were calling it the Climate Plan Killer Bill. SB 1261 is by Senator Birdwell, and it stipulates that the state of Texas has exclusive jurisdiction over regulating greenhouse gases. And the way this bill started out is it mentioned that any ordinance or rule that any political subdivision would make that affects greenhouse gases either directly or indirectly would be prohibited. Now, the good news is we were able to talk them out of the word indirectly, because most everything the climate plans do, as far as any rules that would be made or ordinances, those would be indirect, not direct. Most any direct regulation would be done by TCEQ or by EPA. In other words, we dodged a bullet on that, but we are still concerned about that bill. It could be amended to be worse. Right now, that I will also say that Council Member Chad West, myself, City Houston, my boss, a public citizen, and others testified against this bill a few weeks ago. It had been voted down in committee once, but it resurrected itself because the chair is carrying the bill over in the House, and it's now in calendars. And if you're not familiar with the calendars committee, that is the last stop a bill makes before it heads to the House floor for a vote. So right now, we've encouraged our entire Dallas delegation, but namely Tony Rose from Dallas, who's on the calendars committee, to block this bill from going to the floor. If this bill does not get set by Sunday night at 10 o'clock for the House Daily Calendar, it will die unless someone can find a way to hitch a ride and amend a different bill and put the language on it. So we're all watching Senate Bill 1261. The next bill I want to mention to everyone is House Bill 17. Unfortunately, this has already been signed by the governor and it's effective immediately. This restricts a city's ability to control energy infrastructure, meaning electric versus gas hookups. When this bill was presented by Representative Deschanel, he presented that the Austin Climate Plan and the Dallas Climate Plan were trying to get rid of natural gas hookups. That is not true, but this is passed. So in other words, if the city of Dallas at some point wanted to say, we want to disallow natural gas hookups, that cannot be done. However, I foresee the city being able perhaps to say, we would want electric and natural gas hookups so citizens could have choice. There may be some ways to navigate around this bill, but unfortunately it is now signed and it is effective immediately. Another bill, which I want to mention, by the way, all of these I would say are probably, these first three are the most egregious of all the bills that were offered. HB 610.
Rita, excuse me, Rita, this is Sandy. Will you take questions during your presentation or do you want everybody to wait until you're done?
Why don't I get through this list of 4 before we go to the good bills, and then people can ask questions? How about
After you go through these 4?
Right.
Okay, because there is somebody waiting to ask.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay, so HB 610, this is a bill by Swanson. This bill is also a very broad bill. It would allow for the judicial review of any local law, ordinance, rule that applies to a state license holder that might, air quote, restrict their ability to do business. It could be as simple as hairdressers have to have a state license. If the city of Dallas needed part of their parking lot for a road, that salon owner could order a review of that ordinance or whatever that would apply if it restricted their business. It could apply to tattoo parlors. It could apply to sex shops. It could apply to dry cleaners. It could apply to builders and developers. It is a broad and sweeping bill. But the good news is Wednesday, May 13th was the deadline for all House bills to be voted out of the House. And this bill, thank goodness, is dead. It died on the 13th of May. So we will not have to worry about that bill, but it was pretty scary. The last bill, and then I'll take questions, HB 1501. is still alive. As a matter of fact, I called within the hour before this call started. It was in Natural Resource and Economic Development on the Senate side. It's already passed the House. This bill would prevent any local ordinance from restricting the use of an appliance fueled by natural gas or propane. So some of you might wonder, well, what would that be? That could be, let's say in our CCAP, we wanted to say that gas water heaters couldn't be used. That would be something that an appliance that uses natural gas. Boilers can use natural gas or propane. So that would be two examples of what this bill would prohibit. So where is this bill now? So it's passed the House, it's passed the Senate. It's now going to go the report will come out and it will probably be set for the Senate floor. So that's where that bill is. And Michael, you had a question?
Yes, thanks, Rita. First, I just want to, I'm really grateful for the work you do, keeping an eye on all this stuff and helping all of us keep up, and the work you're doing to try and, I think, work for what is, right for Texas and not for very small, interests. So real quick, and I don't want to belabor this, it seems to me that what's changed in Austin, perhaps because of the rise of clean energy and all this stuff over the last 10 years, which has grown dramatically now. The threat level, it seems to, let's say the gas industry, they seem to be more anxious because 10 years ago it was, we don't want to pick winners and losers, so we won't give any preference or incentives to clean energy. But now they're putting major roadblocks in the way. So the short version is that this is absolutely picking winners and losers, and that it's very focused on, mainly it sounds like from these, the natural gas lobbyists just somehow creating these ridiculous bills that take away local decision-making and freedoms in our specific communities. Thank you.
Michael, I tell you what, I've probably worked 4 sessions sitting in energy committees, energy resources, other committees, and you are right. I actually think that COVID, when the price of natural gas hit the absolute bottom and floor, scared the oil industry to death and gas industry. There is always a big war with oil and gas every session, and they have a huge lobby, and it is their goal to kill any bill that would hurt drillers, producers, and operators. And besides these bills that we just talked about, this is how far it went this session. There is a bill by Phil King to actually ask the comptroller to create what I call a naughty list of companies that are divesting from fossil fuels. And if you are a fund or a company divesting from fossil fuels, then all the agencies that have retirement funds are being instructed not to put any money in those companies, not have them in their portfolios. That's how far it's gone this session. And that bill, I believe, is even still alive. So,
well, yeah. The good news on that is the global train has left that station, so that won't do any good because the capital's already moving where it's moving. They won't, that's silly. But anyway, thank you again, Rita. Good information. I appreciate it.
No worries. Sandy, did you have a question?
I did, Rita. HB 17, I think you said was already signed by the governor. HB 1501, how is that different from HB 17? It seems like they are very similar.
Well, HB 17 is specifically infrastructure. And I will tell you, I do know Austin has talked about telling builders and developers that they only want or have moved toward the direction of electric hookups. 1501 is appliances. So like I said, it could be a boiler. Most of us think of infrastructure as, you know, Atmos gas lines or you know.
Oh, I see. It's broader. It's, yeah.
1501 deals specifically with appliances. And the first thing that came to mind when I saw that bill was water heaters and boilers. I don't know, Sue, if you would have other examples of appliances beyond that, that I not.
Tankless hot water heaters, cooking equipment, dryers. That all of that type of equipment would be under HB 1501. My understanding is HB 17 is strictly the service to the house.
Yes.
And we were really careful in the language in the CCAP to not go there. While we are promoting energy efficient infrastructure and we're promoting the use of clean electric, in other words, not fueled by fossil fuels, we looked at the types of hookups for our homes as being an equity issue. We also have existing franchise agreements with the gas utility that we would be in violation of if we did do such a so we left it out and left it to market choice in Dallas for now.
Well, thank you. That really clarifies the difference between the two bills. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Susan. You said it more eloquently than I did. And you know, guys, there may be a way that we do things with carrots instead of sticks, you know, to promote the use of greener infrastructure and appliances. There may be ways around some of this. So Brittany, if you would go to the next slide. Or did I miss somebody? Sandy, did you have another question?
No, I didn't. Thank you, Rita. I was done.
Okay. Okay, let's go to some good bills. Okay. So bills of benefit to CCAP would be SB 1210, which was written by Senator Nathan Johnson of Dallas, provides for the use of substitute refrigerants instead of hydrofluorocarbon refrigerants beginning in 2023 as approved by EPA. This is actually on the governor's desk. It was sent to the governor on the 12th of this month. The governor has until Tuesday to sign it because bills that are sent to the governor within session, he has 10 days to sign them. If it's upon adjournment of session, he has 20 days to sign them. So normally a lot of us think of June 15th or June 20th. In this case, June 20th would be the deadline for this session for bills that are passed right at the end. So what if some of you aren't familiar with hydrofluorocarbon refrigerants, think of things that have been used in refrigerators and air conditioning units years ago. This kind of I can hardly say it, an HFC, that's what most of us call it for short, is many times more potent than CO2. And its shelf life in the atmosphere can last for decades. Europe has already tried to get rid of hydrofluorocarbons as early as 2011. There are now other substitutes for these kind of refrigerants available. It's estimated that almost 75% of the refrigeration and air conditioning sector has the potential to be converted to natural refrigerants. And for instance, in 2020, HFCs were superseded with isobutane for residential air conditioning systems, chillers for car air conditioning systems, and CO2 for commercial refrigeration. So Senator Johnson is just trying to accelerate that. And there has been some federal legislation on hydrofluorocarbons. Don't ask me what it is, because that isn't an issue that I follow every week. But hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea about this bill. And like I said, the governor has until Tuesday to sign it, because it was sent to him on the 12th. HB 4120, I am sad to say, is dead. It had to be reported out of the House chamber on Wednesday, the 13th. And this was a great bill. It would have expanded a state grant program for the purchase of electric buses and the infrastructure for those buses for schools. It died in calendars, which I will say is probably the most powerful committee in the House, because if you can block bills into oblivion, they'll never see the light of day for a House floor vote. And so there's a lot of power for those legislators that serve on that committee, which is chaired by Representative Burrows. Our local Dallas rep is Tony Rose on that committee. So unfortunately, that bill never made it to the floor. Maybe it can be passed through on another session. I know I have 2 bills the governor signed that it took me 3 sessions to get done. So hopefully we can try again. This next bill I'm going to talk about, HB 4472, has already changed since yesterday. It's some of the good parts have been taken out, and many of us are working to try and get those parts back in. HB 4472 was voted out of the Senate Natural Resource and Economic Development Committee this morning, and it is designed to expand the TURP program to include, and this is what it was yesterday, before some things were taken out, to include money for traffic congestion mitigation projects, a residential energy efficiency grant program. There was a part of this was for low income winterization, air monitors for non-attainment areas such as ours, reductions for flaring from oil and gas drilling, and electric storage projects. So unfortunately, the residential low-income winterization program has been stripped out. The traffic congestion mitigation project, part of it is still there, and we are concerned, many of us, that that is code for road building. As most of you know, there are things you can do, such as turning lanes and other things that help move traffic to lower emissions. But we do have a concern that this means road projects, which would only make greenhouse gases worse. And I do know the flaring reduction portion is intact. And I can't tell you for sure where electric storage is. The reason is I have not seen the substitute bill yet from yesterday. Not all the committees post these things in a timely manner, like within a couple hours after committee. And so therefore I haven't seen the bill, but all of us are working to try and get this bill, like the winterization, back in the bill. This is past this committee, which means it's going to be set for a Senate floor vote, and then it goes to the governor's desk. But before it goes to the governor's desk, the original version of 4472 by Landgraf and its Senate sponsor will have to confer and reconcile the bill. And I have actually seen bills die in conference if both the House conferees and the Senate conferees don't agree. Tracy, did you have a question?
I do. My question is, since the low-income weatherization part has been stripped out, does this prevent the amount of WAP funding that filters down through the federal government, or it just prevents a new program from being put in place?
It wouldn't hurt WAP, Tracy. What it would do is we just wouldn't have some extra money coming out of the TURP program. That's what it would mean. TURP, for many sessions now, legislators have seen the amount of money that the Texas Emission Reduction Program produces around vehicles. And there have been many grabs for the money over, I want to say, at least a decade worth of sessions. So, and not all that, and the reason why they want this money is it's a pretty big pot of money, and they wanted to grab it for all sorts of other projects. Well, these projects, what this would do is just create a new pot of money for some of these things to happen to enhance whatever cities or other areas might be doing, coming from TURP, from whatever's raised in that total every year. Susan, do you happen to know or remember how much TURP raises every year, or do you know the numbers on that? Because I don't know the numbers offhand.
I do not. I'd be happy to look it up and report back.
Yeah, either that, guys, or I can find out, because a lot of the groups are getting together at the end of session to find amendments for 4472. I know who's working on this, so I can give you the figure. I want to say, well, I don't want to second guess, but I can get the figure, but it's at least $150 million that we're talking about in this pot. So,
Okay.
So of the bills we talked about, everyone, 4472 is still alive. If you want to follow the bill, email me. I'll be sending out alerts on this. We're still trying to get people to carry amendments to put the good things that were taken out, put back in. And the same thing with 1501. But this is just a small sampling of what's gone on down there in regards to things that would affect CCAP. Michael?
Yeah, Rita, just one quick question. You mentioned my Senator Nathan Johnson and Victoria Niave as my rep. I know where those people stand on these things. I can call them and write them 19 different times on any given issue. And does that make a difference, or where else can our voice and our opinion and our desires as Texans go that would make a difference? If our rep's already in the right place, what is your advice there?
Well, what I would do at this point, first, I wouldn't email the offices. I would call, because staff is running around like a bunch of crazy people, just trying to keep track of all the bills their boss has to vote on. So I would call. The other thing you can do is, now granted, these bills are out of committee. I often have people ask me, should I only write my rep on a committee? And the answer to that is no. You write the entire committee to try and build up the pressure on it. And some people say to me, should I only write the Democrats? on these bills, because normally they're supported by Democrats, and that is a no. You should call the other reps in your region, because their vote doesn't just stand for their district. It's if this becomes law, it affects the entire state of Texas. If you know anyone, for instance, I used to work a lot in East Texas on pipelines. And if you know somebody in an area, let's say you're trying to influence, let's say it's Representative Leach, who's a Republican complainer. If you know neighbors, friends, colleagues that go to his church, that are friends of his, etc., get a hold of them to try and shine a light and have them call or email, etc. It's all about connections. And whether you think a representative or senator is on your side or not, they need to know how the public feels. So it's good to go ahead and write, or in this case, at this late date, call them and voice your opinion. And make sure when you make those calls, you give them your name, your address, and your phone number. And it can be very short, whatever you say. The good thing about phone calls is, even if you leave them at 10 o'clock or midnight, the staff have to clear all those phone calls off their voicemail every day. So you know they're going to record those calls.
Yeah. Well, to your point, at this point, I don't want to make my reps people too busy on thing. I'm already giving them more of what they already have. You know what I'm saying? In other words,
I agree with that, Michael.
Yeah. So,
I agree with that. Alan, did you have a question?
Yes, you mentioned in the previous discussion, or in part of your discussion, carrots versus sticks. I mean, this past week we've had two really incredible events, I think, in relation to electrification. It has to do with the advent of Ford announcing their new electric F-150, which is the #1 selling car in the country, in the U.S. And that's going to increase more electrical solar demand, as well as really kind of give permission to truck owners to go electric. So, and it's going to be at an incredible price for, I'm not here to advertise Ford Motor, but that's a huge event when you see a car maker do that. Secondly, Harvard just announced this week that they have some new breakthrough solid state battery technology that doesn't use lithium, and it also charges, you can charge a full car battery in about 10 minutes. And in addition to that, the batteries don't break down as quickly and they last 2 to 3 times longer. This is in its early, they've proven this, it's in stages, and it's not coming to market immediately, but it's a breakthrough battery technology. So I know that we're playing kind of a major game of whack-a-mole down in Austin, trying to kill bills that are really negatively impacting our environment. Can the CPAC encourage or incubate or support technologies that are going to, and also possibly create job growth for Dallas, saying, look, we have a city, does this run counter to the state laws you're seeing thrown out here right now to prevent us as a city from encouraging for job development and for technological incubating, enlisting support or creating support for fledgling technologies that are coming out that are proven, but we may want to create some kind of financial support on that behalf to attract people to develop companies that will create these technologies that are going to be environmentally. That's my question. Is there anything we can do in the CPAC with it?
I'm going to let Susan jump in on that one.
I think the CCAP for now, it is fairly comprehensive per its name. I think and I'm getting some feedback here, so I'm not sure. I think the CCAP is there. I think moving forward, we will do what we need to do. I think we look at reamping if we need to action in the CCAP based on one of two things. We are doing an update to the greenhouse gas inventory this summer. That contract is also on the city council agenda next week. Should we not see appreciable improvements in reducing our emissions, then we look at ratcheting up actions. The other thing is, I think we follow what's going on the federal level. I am getting emails from the climate mayors and from the White House Office on Climate relative to federal initiatives, relative to pushing the needle. And I'm happy to share them with the task force. But right now, I think that impetus is going to be coming from the federal government, not necessarily the state.
Yeah.
Did I answer your question?
I'm not sure because I really want to, I don't know if it's, maybe I'm asking in terms of our mission. Is our mission to also encourage and support technologies either through creating space, an incubator to attract companies to go ahead and possibly bring jobs here related to this and create jobs? That's my question, because
so yes, and you know, we're in conversations with our Office of Economic Development relative to that potential. Through the City Business Climate Alliance that we belong to and some other initiatives, we are looking a great deal at the potential to rebuild our economy through green jobs, through green initiatives. And that's in the plan right now.
But are these funds that are coming down federally, are they going to be administered through the state, or are they coming to municipalities?
I don't have that information at this time.
Because our bottleneck will be the state.
You know, I think one thing that is really helpful is that the head of the U.S. Climate Mayors that is working directly with the White House Office on Climate is Mayor Turner from Houston. And so he is acutely aware of some of the challenges that Texas cities have right now. They are one of the cities like Dallas that have a climate plan that we're working through. And so we're in those discussions. I think we will continue to be in those discussions. And that's about all I can say right now without getting myself in trouble.
Thank you.
One thing I want to mention to everyone before we go to the next slide, and I didn't put it on on this PowerPoint, is there is a bill. Some of you are probably familiar with it. I'm going to try and make sure I don't get the number wrong. SB 1278 by Schwertner, that would add to your registration of your EV or hybrid vehicle. That bill may not make it to the House floor due to what happened yesterday with the adjournment. But that bill included some language about EV infrastructure, about the funding of it, and so forth. But I think that bill is not going to make it due to the deadline of Sunday night and what happened yesterday. One other thing I want to mention, and this is the last two bills I mentioned. Some of you may be wondering what's happening with the ERCOT grid and the electric disaster bills. There are two bills we are watching right now, SB 2 and SB 3. SB 3, again, I think it's by Schwertner. there's going to be like probably 20 or 30 amendments on this bill. What it is, it cobbles a whole bunch of House bills by Patty and other people about the grid. I will tell you, I don't work on this bill per se, but there's nothing about the winterization of gas wells in this bill. There has been a section taken out but rewritten and put back in that would affect punishing renewables for not being dispatchable and basically charging them for ancillary services. In other words, for them to help shore up the grid. The bill is very much in flux, and there's a whole posse of people I know working on amendments. Stay tuned for that. But Brittany, if you'll go to the next slide, and then Alan, I'll get back to you. Oh, back up one. Alan, did you have a question?
Oh, I'd heard that there was a bill that was connected with, and I think you're touching on it here. Somehow, since gasoline generates funds for roads, and the electric cars don't because they're not buying gas, there was something with regard to penalizing EVs in particular. There was a bill. I don't know whether that got killed.
Yeah, that's the one I'm talking about. And to touch on that real quick, there were probably 7 bills offered this session, but only Schwartner's bill 1728 is getting toward the finish line. It has been rewritten like 3 times. Part of it is going to charge your registration per how many miles driven. Although the highest tier is 9,000 miles. I don't know about you guys, but there's no way I could get by in a year driving only 9,000 miles. Some of the bills were as high as charging you $325 annually on your registration, and $250 and $200 and all over the place. It is now a tiered bill, and if anybody wants it, I can send you the latest version of it. Back to the electric bills. Some of us are fearful that the winterization we need, guys, on these power plants are not going to be required like they should be, which is quite distressing. And because there were reports as far back as 2011 when the legislature made winterization voluntary. So stay tuned for that. There'll probably be a big fight over all the amendments that people want to put in that bill. So with that, I know I've taken up a lot of time. May 13th on these dates is already come and gone. Sunday, I didn't, Sunday or I should have put Sunday's deadline on here. Sunday, if bills are not out of calendars and set for a daily House calendar by 10 o'clock this Sunday night, they are dead. Wednesday, May 25th, the House has to consider those bills on the Senate bills on the daily or supplemental calendar. Now, you may wonder, what's the difference? Well, like on May 13th, there were 25 pages of bills that day they had to get through by midnight. They only got to page 11. So in other words, if your Senate bill is probably on page 20 on Wednesday, it's gone. It's done. Monday, of course, is the last day of session. Sunday, June 20th is the last day for the governor to sign or veto bills that are passed on the last day. If they are like some of my bills, if they were sent to him on the 12th or the 5th or whatever, they only have 10 days to be signed by the governor, or they automatically become law. Last slide, Brittany. This is this website here, capital.state.tx.us, is something I live on hours and hours all day long. This is where you can listen to committee hearings, hear about legislative votes, see archived hearings. This is, we call it the TLO, or the Texas Legislature online site. So I know we're at the end of session, but this would be of interest to anyone who wants to follow bills, look up old hearings, floor fights, or anything else. So with that, guys, that concludes my little snapshot of the legislature. So with that, shall we go into the next presentation on buildings and energy?
Yes, but I just got to say, Rita, this is Sandy. Thank you. That was great. A lot of terrific information. Thank you. And thanks for going down there and doing battle on our behalf.
Well, I tell you, I must be a masochist because I actually like sitting through hearings. Maybe not till 4 a.m, but I learned so much in every hearing I sit in from people all over the state, and I find it fascinating. So thank you for saying that.
We're glad we have you. Thank you.
I appreciate that. So Susan, is it Eric Thompson who's going to give us our presentation now on buildings?
No, Eric is here in case y'all have detailed questions on buildings and energy. I just very quickly, and I don't know if we want to do it before or after FAR, he has 2 exciting council items on next month's agenda. Eric, if you're still with us, can you just give us a quick 2-minute version of those 2 resolutions? Because I think they're inordinately important, and they reflect on the buildings and energy piece that we're presenting on today.
Sure. So again, Eric Thompson, Director of Building Services. We have 2, I think it's June 23rd, council agenda items that both deal with energy. One is basically entering the city applying to be part of the Encore efficiency program. Some of you are probably aware of it, but one of the regulated fees that we pay on the electricity bill is for energy efficiency, and this is how Encore basically rebates some of their customers who pursue some of these energy efficiency projects. Like we've got a couple of roof replacement projects that we have coming up that we hope to, once we get this agreement in place, apply for a little bit of rebate money. It won't be a lot, but every little bit helps. So we have one agenda item on the 23rd of June to authorize participation in this program. It doesn't cost us anything beyond what we already pay, but it should result in a little bit of funding that comes back that we can then roll forward into other energy efficiency projects for city buildings. Second agenda item is with it's a amendment to our electricity contract with TXU. You may or may not be aware, we're in the actually 3rd year now of a 10-year agreement with TXU to provide electricity. The amendment to the contract that's the subject of this agenda item would be to basically establish the price that we would establish the value of any excess energy that might be exported to the grid from any solar panels on city facilities. Now, there's probably a very low likelihood that we'll ever get to the point of actually exporting right now, because most of the 7 or 8 facilities that have significant PV on them, the solar panels only probably contribute about half of the building's load. But we just wanted to take advantage of the opportunity in the event that we get to the point where at some point maybe there is some excess, maybe it's on a weekend or some period of time where a building might be closed for some reason. Potentially, we could potentially export some power back to the grid. So this agenda item is a very slight amendment to the electricity contract to set a value for that. That value will basically be the RTSP that's set by ERCOT every 15 minutes. So it'll be a variable rate. It's whatever the power is valued at on the grid at the time. And that's maybe a little longer than 2 minutes, but a really quick overview of these two upcoming agenda items.
Thank you. Looks like we've got a question, Michael and Tracy both have questions.
Tracy's first. Go ahead, Tracy.
All right, thanks. Eric, I wanted to ask you a question. I understand that the West Dallas Multipurpose Center is has had a site survey for solar there. And I'm just wondering where, if at all, it could be added that low-income neighbors are trained to work on that install, maybe just one person from the immediate neighborhood that could get trained to work on the install to access the industry. I'd love to know if there's a way to put that in, you know, RFPs or something like that for the contractors that win those contracts. So we can close that loop of including low-income people providing access to the industry.
Great idea. I think this is actually part of what we anticipate being a September, maybe even October briefing to the committee that talks a little bit more about broader things with energy. There's a lot of work, even though there's only 1.2 people really dedicated to energy in the department right now. There's a lot of stuff going on. Some of that includes some solar feasibility studies that we're working with SECO, the State Energy Conservation Office on. I don't have the list in front of me. Srinivas, actually the energy manager's on. He might be able to confirm that West Dallas is one of those or not. But either way, to your point about the workforce development, that's something that we definitely want to work with the Economic Development Office on. And as you may have heard some of the discussion this past, well, it's coming up next week. The Sustainable Procurement Program is about to go to council. And that would be something that gets tied into that initiative as well. So that we're looking more broadly at pretty much everything the city buys. So that would easily be a way for us to, I think, incorporate some sort of a workforce training aspect, potentially in part of the evaluation of procurements for solar projects.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw my email in the chat for you and would love to, you know, discuss that further if
Sure.
you have time.
We'll make time.
Mhm. Great. Hey, Eric. Hi, this is Michael Martin. Thanks for your update. And I want to second what Tracy just said. So that's great. I'm glad y'all are talking about that. You mentioned real quick that 7 to 8 city buildings have solar that produces about half their power, that's a great story, right? It's a lot better than zero. And the second question then is, what's the remaining inventory? Just your rough estimate, because I'm in this business. So all buildings aren't suitable for solar, but notwithstanding the quality of the roof, because that's easy to fix, how many more buildings does the city own roughly? Could we put solar on? I don't have any idea how big that inventory, just a rough idea.
That total inventory is somewhere around 900. But there's a little caveat to that. Some of those 900 are like storage buildings and storage sheds. And so building services, we're responsible for about 485 buildings, but a few of those are also storage sheds and that kind of thing. There are really about 225 buildings that we talk about as the ones that the public most frequently kind of interacts with, that aren't really strictly operational buildings, but you know, libraries, rec centers, City Hall, Oak Cliff Municipal, the courts building, things like that, fire stations. So there's a good 225 or so of those, and that's really where the focus is. So when we come back in the fall to talk about everything going on with the developing energy management program. You'll hear about benchmarking of those facilities. You'll hear a little bit more about the solar assessments, the feasibility studies. And, you know, we did 8 because that's as many as we could get for free, basically. But then we're also working with them in a different program to do some energy audits of other buildings. So, yeah, we're
Okay.
keeping an eye on, you know, DC as well, because if green infrastructure funding happens, you know, we at least have some buildings that came out of the feasibility studies that we would probably like to move on as soon as we can. And depending on how much funding is available, that really dictates how much more we can how far we can go with that.
Okay. No, thank you. That's good to know. And maybe we can talk further at some other point, and some way I can serve what you're trying to do and what the city's trying to do, because I think if it's got a roof and it's got a load and it doesn't have trees, it's feasible. So anyway, that it's just not that complicated. That's the thing. But I appreciate you've got to go through a number of steps. So thank you very much for the time today.
Yeah, and one other thing I'd add on that is some of them are relatively small, so
Sure.
it may or may not really pan out. It might take you, you know, a career to have that paid back if the few panels only offset 15% of the power.
Yeah.
And how the building's used. So you're probably well aware it's
Sure.
It's
Absolutely.
not as clean cut as some might think from the outside looking in.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
So, Susan,
Yes.
I think, I don't know, I wasn't looking at my agenda a minute ago, but obviously it's Katie and FAR that are going to do this business and energy presentation. Shall we just go ahead and get started?
Yes, we can dive in. This is going to be focused on the energy piece of the CCAP, of which several of the items that Eric mentioned kind of gave us a quick update of where we are as far as moving forward on some of these initiatives. With that, I'm happy to turn it over to FAR. Katie is on a well-deserved vacation because she's got a birthday on Monday.
Okay, well, let's jump right in. Brittany, thanks for bringing up the slides. Yeah, I think we'll start right here at goal number 2. The last time we met, we went through the building sector, which was goal number 1. So to complete this conversation, I think today we're just going to talk through the energy goal, why it's important, and what's in our work plan for this year and where we are with those items. So for goal number 2, you know, the buildings and energy sectors are really connected, and they produce the highest greenhouse gas emissions in our inventory. 33% from commercial buildings, 20% from homes, and 8% from the industrial sector. And they're connected in our inventory, but in our plan, we separated them because they really address different types of actions. Like in the building sector that we talked about last time, the actions were really aimed at reducing energy use. And in the energy sector, as you'll see in today's presentation, all the actions are really aimed at the types of energy used. So the goal number 2 actually states Dallas generates and uses renewable, reliable, and affordable energy. Next slide, please. So what do we plan to do in this area? There are 3 objectives associated with goal number 2 related to energy, and they're all about increasing. So the first one really deals with increasing reliability. What this means to us is less downtime, less rolling. The second one deals with increasing renewable generation. And this really focuses on encouraging that investment that we need to have more renewable energy available. And the third one deals with increasing access to renewables. And this one has a huge equity impact because it addresses that affordability factor. Next slide, please. So goal number 2, why it matters. This is so important because Dallas is so heavily reliant on fossil fuels. As you know, this contributes to our greenhouse gases that are emitted. And we do produce a little bit of wind and solar, as you can see from this chart, but it's just over 20% of our grid mix. And then when we talk about why actions in this area are so important, I think those winter storms are still top of mind for everyone. That left residents without power, businesses without power, that had significant economic and public health implications. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the actions that are actually in our work plan for this fiscal year and let you know what we're doing in those areas and what we're planning. So these slides were actually produced at the end of our second quarter, and now we're halfway through our third quarter. So this slide does kind of look a little scary, but there have still been some actions that have happened beginning in the third quarter that you'll see reflected in our next update. So what's in our plan for this fiscal year? Well, we plan to activate E3, E5, and E6. E3 really talks about partnering with public utility companies to promote renewable options. And although you see not a lot has started here, we're actually working on building in that educational component. That piece that's missing. We're looking at our current web resources, and we're wanting to really be a one-stop shop for residents so that they can learn more about renewables. So that's definitely under development. And what that would do is activate 2 of the milestones you see here under E3. And E5, this one is build a regional strategic partnerships to promote adoption of renewables. And one thing that is in the progress right now and listed here is to develop a strategic partnership to increase investments in renewable projects. And we're actually working with quite a few entities. So what I suspect you'll see in our next quarter update is that both of these items are in progress because we're working with SMU, we're working with the Hunt Institute, we're working with RMI, and we're working with NTREC. So I suspect we'll see some advances in those actions. As far as E6, this action is actually to establish and invest in renewable energy hubs through partnerships with the private sector. And this is really where NTREG is helping us to develop a rubric that will help identify and score some potential sites for renewable energy hubs. And we're also collaborating with them on some best practice toolkits. So we'll definitely see some activity in that area. Brittany, next slide, please. So this slide definitely looks a little more colorful. This is in our work plan for this year. We're also activating E7, E8, and E10. And as you can see, E7 is related to extending the city's efforts to develop more renewable energy projects on city facilities. And Eric really did a great job of giving us an update on what's happening with our building services department and what they have coming up for council and some of the new projects that are in the works. And on E8, this action is to continue to implement green energy policies for city facilities, both also in progress. Oh, this is the green energy policy that Eric mentioned earlier under E8. And E10 is to advocate for renewable energy policies at the state and federal level. And in progress right now, it looks like we're working with the Texas mayors to advocate to the state legislature. And I think Sue mentioned earlier that she's in communication with climate mayors. So I expect to see some activity in that area during a third quarter report. So we have, next slide, please. We have a lot of great partners helping to implement some of these actions in the energy sector of the CCAP. We heard from our building services department. The bond office and sanitation are also playing critical roles, as well as the Office of Environmental Quality and Sustainability. Is there another slide, Brittany, or was that it? I think that's it. Okay, and yep, I think that was it. So open for questions, comments.
Hey,
Michael?
Farts, it's Michael. I'll jump in if no one else is yet. So, yeah, thanks for the update there. And are the updated, are you saying there's a new update to notes are coming soon?
So we report on our work plan progress every quarter. And so we finished the first quarter and the second quarter, and we're about halfway through the third quarter. So shortly you'll see some third quarter updates.
Because that'll be what, end of June or end of July? End of July, right? August, September. I can't remember. Anyway, okay. Thank you. So I just want to make a couple quick comments. You point out that, well, first of all, what utilities are critical to this joint promotion that you mentioned in E3? Because, you know, in the deregulated market here, you know, I'm just wondering who we're thinking about there. Who are the key partners that are utilities to work with us on joint promoting of clean energy?
So in our initial stakeholder group during the development process of the CCAP, we definitely engaged a number of utilities from Oncor to Atmos, and they're very willing to work with us on projects. And that's really where this goal originated.
Okay. And I just think fundamentally, just to make a statement and not to belabor it now, the fundamental problem in the deregulated part of the, you just mentioned, in my opinion, two utilities that because of their mission and their business purposes are not the right partners in my mind to make big change here. Atmos, I can't quite get that one. Oncor is limited by what they can do by their charter of what they're in business to do. And their annual incentive funds are quite small and don't have a huge impact. So I think that's one of the things I think we've got to figure out is who are other players. And the other part in the conversation where you talk about NT-REG, and I'm a member of NT-REG like Sue and a lot of people on this call, NT-REG is great, but that's a little nonprofit, a bunch of people who are passionate about, you know, renewable energy. Strategic partnerships, we've got to move into the private sector and get the big money in town and the big DRC players. I've talked about the chambers a lot on these calls. We got to go get these folks in the boat with us, because if they understand the value proposition and all the incredible benefits and upside, I think we can accomplish that. But I think I don't know how we get their attention and how we make them understand it, because then it becomes this massive business opportunity. And let's face it, I've been here my whole life. Things change in Dallas when the economic engine here decides we're going to do something, for the most part. And we got to go enlighten them, inform them, and engage them. So I'll volunteer to help on that. So I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that we've got to raise the bar on, I think, where we're going and who we're working with, because we don't have an Austin Energy or a CPS driving a strategy here. And it's difficult for you guys to do it by yourselves, of course. So I'm just trying to get people thinking about who can get in this boat with us, because the boat's got to get bigger and have big people in it to make things happen. And that's my concern here is in our deregulated part of the state here. So anyway, thank you for the update. Appreciate hearing that. And I'll look forward to more updates as, you know, the progress continues.
Okay, Tracy, did you have a question?
I just, I started an email to you and Sue, because you need to be aware of, I mean, we're just so grassroots. I mean, we've started an energy efficiency program and working with a young man from TEPRI who will start teaching at UTA in the fall. And one NT-REG member who's also a former member of our stakeholder group here, and identifying a group of homeowners that we're going to, in the lowest income areas, to create a case study for how energy efficiency upgrades affect their ability to pay their bills. And so right now, I mean, like to Michael's point, it's a handful of us. I am super excited about the possibility of working with this young man that's moving up to Arlington, who will be be a professor at UTA because he'll have a host of students that he can get on this program, but it's going to be valuable information similar to a study that TEPRI did in Houston. And it'll be great information that can guide our policies in the North Texas area. So I'll finish that email and send it off to you guys.
I'm just going to jump in and ask FAR my own question here. FAR, you mentioned Atmos and TXU. Were those partnerships looked at because they are the most localized partners that we identified, or have you looked beyond those two entities for other partnerships and either they weren't viable, or just if you could tell us how far this search went?
So Rita, let me dive in real quick.
Okay.
Both Encore, TXU, and Atmos were part of our original stakeholder group, and that's why they came to mind. We are not opposed to, and we certainly are open to working with any and all energy providers in North Texas, understanding that there's about 200 of them. And so I'm pretty sure FAR mentioned those because they were the ones that have been on our radar as being larger stakeholders. That said, we have 2 projects in the pipeline right now related to community solar. One is working with our housing department to include solar on 6 units. And this is really a pilot program where we're providing upfront funding as part of a forgivable loan for our affordable housing construction. So that's one of the projects that is coming forward for council improvement within the next couple of weeks to a month. The second one is, and she's not here today to talk about it more, but Katie has been working very hard on a request for a competitive sealed proposal for implementing solar on the closed portions of the Deepwood landfill. And that would be to put it out for competitive bid just because we have an existing contract for our own energy with TXU. We met with them to give them a heads up we're doing this project, did not give them salient details where they would have a competitive advantage. But I will tell you that after that meeting, we wanted to make sure that we were clear with them that we are not looking for the city to be purchasing electricity directly from that project. It's a landfill lease project. And they came back, they are interested. We've had several other utility scale solar developers turn around and ask us about that project. They're interested. We have written in workforce training, and we have written in a portion of the produced power from that project. We want training opportunities for low income, for those folks that could create it. We're also evaluating for the ability of that project to generate both training and green jobs moving forward. So those are projects that are in the pipeline that I would anticipate we will get more interest from some of the other local utility electric providers. But that's a work in progress.
Okay. Michael, did you have another question? Okay, because I saw your hand up. Anybody else have questions? Thanks, Susan, for that update. Okay, then. Well, with that said, Miss Grayson, would you like to take the gavel back of the meeting?
Okay, and thank you. Thank you for doing that, Rita. Good information, I think. If we are through the agenda, then I can ask for the meeting wrap up and the adjournment. And what I would like to mention to the task force members, and there's several things. First, I believe I saw in the chat a question from Tracy about when those budget meetings were going to be. And I wanted to let the task force members know that Rita and I are going to send out an email over the weekend detailing the information on the budget meetings. And we're going to send it to all the task force members so that you know when these meetings are and can choose to weigh in if you would like to do so. And we hope you will. So we will get that out to you over the weekend. I believe one of them is Monday, and Sue, I think the other one is Tuesday.
Correct.
Yeah. So we'll get more detailed information to you all on those budget meetings. And then I wanted to mention that we have 3 more meetings left for our task force, one in June, one in August, and one in September. Most city boards and commissions don't meet in July, and neither will we. So we have those 3 meetings left, and on those 3 meeting agendas will be items pertaining to recommendations we can make on appointments to the new Environmental Commission, and also recommendations on next year's CCAP action items. And then we'll also have space on those agendas for anything issue related that may come up in the meantime. So that's kind of our work plan to finish out our 3 last meetings. We'll do recommendations on several items. So just wanted to give you all a heads up on that. And so with that, we can adjourn if no one else has anything. Rita, you had your hand up. Did you have a question or a comment?
I just put my email in the chat for everyone. So if anyone, I know I'm going to be sending out a bill alert about 1501 and 4472 once we figure it out. So if you want any of those alerts to contact your legislator, my email's in the chat. And most of you have it anyway from our meetings as well. So.
Okay, thanks for that, Rita. So with that, I'm not seeing any other hands up. So could I hear a motion for adjournment? Maria?
Yeah, I did have a question.
Okay, good.
Is there a possibility of including new business in one of the next meetings?
You mean an
in
item
the
that
agenda?
says, do you mean an item, Maria, that says new business or a specific piece of new business?
Yeah, a specific piece of new business. Okay,
I
and
think
how
we
do I
would
do
have
that?
time. If you would contact Sue and
Okay.
me, we can see about putting that on the agenda.
Okay, perfect.
That would
Thank
be
you.
great.
And-
Thank you.
And I motion to adjourn.
Oh, thank you, Maria. We have a motion to adjourn from Maria. Is there a second?
Second,
Is that Michael?
Alan?
Alan, I'm sorry, Alan. Okay. And so we will adjourn the meeting at 2:37 p.m. And thank you all for your attendance and your questions. Appreciate it. Thank you. You all have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Two.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
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 Thanks.